Good morning, everyone. It's Dan Campbell with Texas Open Door Realty. Welcome to another edition of the Happy Home Owner. I've got my friend David Tandy, the president of Texas National Title, with me again today. He has some excellent information that I learned about on the subject of cybersecurity. And so we're going to take 2 sessions to talk about this today, and then we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. But it's just scary how much is going on out there. Every time I turn around, David, I hear about data breaches that have happened. And I know, just a few months ago, we learned about Equifax, one of the credit bureaus that had millions of data, people's information was compromised.
Yep.
So I went online, and sure enough, my wife and I's information is compromised. And so, don't know exactly what all that means, but can you just tell us a little bit about what is a data breach and what are some common types of that to start off with today?
Well, 2019's been a big year for data breaches. So there's, if you go online, kind of do searching for what data breaches have happened, there's the 20 largest data breaches ever. 7 of them have been this year. And
Wow.
Those are of the large data breaches. And when I say large, I mean 100 million records or more. Of those, there have been, of the top 20, 7 of them have been this year. So there's been a lot of, such as Equifax, data breaches. And the sad thing is that as hackers get better, they have just learned that there's more and more vulnerabilities, and all those vulnerabilities have not been solved. And so as they figure out new vulnerabilities, they go back through and check every source they know about to see if that exists there, and they keep finding ways to get into the systems. And then the other thing that happens is that, have you heard about phishing emails?
Yes.
Criminals will send emails that are fake emails. They look legitimate, and they're
Okay.
getting better and better. And they've either got a link or they've got an attachment, and all those are loaded with malware. So that's what happened to. That's one of the things that happened to some of the big data breaches, was that someone clicked on a bad email, and that opened up their entire database to people. So
Wow.
to the criminals.
Okay. How can I find out if my data's been stolen?
Well, there's no really sure way of doing it. The most popular way is there's a website called Have I Been Pwned. That's PWNED, Have I Been Pwned. And that website lets you put your email address in there, and it will go through and search about 8 billion records that are on. It's a legitimate website. It's really scary putting your email address in some place, but that one is a legitimate one. And it searches about 400 of the databases have all been uploaded to this site very securely, and it will check and tell you if your email address and password has been loaded in there. So that's one way. Know before, KNOWBE, and then the number 4, know before, is a way of helping train your employees to not click on fish mail, but they also have some services. One of them is that they'll go through and check the same databases and other places. Or you'll get a notice, like Equifax, and tell you that. So there's those ways, but frankly, as you found out, you probably didn't necessarily get a notice about your breach, so you found out about it by going online. Equifax provided you a solution, so companies will do that. So there's a lot of reasons why you might have your records may have been compromised and you don't know it. So
Okay. Well, those are some great resources. We'll put those at the end of this when we rebroadcast this. We'll get those websites on the.
There's one other one that has that's came out this year. Google added an extension to their Chrome web browser, and it is a password check. So as you're inputting your password, it's looking and comparing it against all the breached databases, and it alerts you right then. And I've loaded it. It's something that is very legitimate, and it's constantly checking it. So that's another way.
So is that an app that Google provides?
It's an extension to their Chrome browser.
Oh, extension to their Chrome browser.
So you go to Google and their password checkup, and you will add an extension.
Okay, great, excellent information. So I listen to a morning radio show, and they have a caller that calls in and they play a game. And then at the end of that caller wins a prize. And so they say, hold on, and we'll get your information. And by this afternoon, we'll sell it on the dark web. And, and so that's a joke, of course. But the dark web is real. So what are the odds that my information, what does it mean when we hear that joked about this thing called the dark web and them buying information like that? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
So dark web is real. It is you have to have a special browser to get to the dark web, and it's a very anonymous environment for people to interact. And so that's where all the criminals have gone to, is the dark web. And it's a lot easier to go on there, and you'll find 100,000 records that you can buy for 2 cents a record that have got passwords in it. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to hack someone's individual account. So that's kind of what the criminals have all gone to, is they just buy data in bulk. They run robot programs that try to get into your account, and they find that's how a lot of realtors' accounts get hacked for wire fraud, is their email accounts have been compromised through Equifax or Yahoo. Yahoo had 3 billion records compromised.
Wow.
3 billion records over the course of about 4 years. Every record they had wound up getting compromised and loaded on the dark web. And so if you're a real estate agent, you've got a Yahoo account, and you've never changed your password, bad guys have got access to your account. So you need to change your password.
Okay. So that's one thing we should do, change our passwords regularly. What if I go to one of these sites that you've told me to go to, and I learn that my information has been compromised? What are steps that I should take? Step
number 1, change your password. Step number 2, don't use the same password on anything on other accounts. That's kind of the challenge. You change your password there, but if you use the same password everywhere, then that same password, now they can figure out how to go use that same compromised password on your banking system and everything else. So it's important to not use the same password on your different systems. Change your password on anything you find might be compromised. Change your password periodically, because that locks someone out. If they have gotten access, that'll lock them back out. There's every application, your email account and every application has got what's called two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication.
Right.
You've all experienced it on your banking system or whatever. It just means that you log in with a password, and then you have to have a code to finish going forward. That does, Microsoft did a study and just released it this year and said that locks out 99.9% of all automated attempts to try to get into your system. So when they buy all those passwords and they run an automated attack, if you've got two-factor authentication, then that will prevent you from being hacked, even if they do have your password. And then I think that those are kind of the big things. There are a lot of other things you can do to further secure your systems, but those are kind of the big ones that you want to do.
So I use a credit monitoring system that monitors all 3 credit bureaus and sends me an instant update if they think that my social security number or my driver's license is being used and maybe I didn't know about it. So you told me that that's a good way to protect your information like that, but that's really not enough, right? I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Well, and we were talking before that you'd learned that from Frank Abagnale of the seminar. Well, same person also would further tell you, go ahead and just lock your credit.
Okay.
And the simple solution is just lock your credit whenever you need, with all 3 bureaus. That way, no one can access your credit without you going in and releasing it for that one event, such as you're applying for a loan to buy a house. Well, you go in and you release it.
Got it.
And then after that's done, after your credit has been approved for that purchase, you go back in and lock it back down. So there's 2 things there. I think real-time monitoring is good. Locking it down is good. And then the same services I just talked about, Know Before and Have I Been Pwned, those also provide monitoring services. So those are good ones to do and consider, that they'll track for just data breaches in general. So I think kind of going to the next stage, which is, what else can I do to if I have been breached, or just if I just want to have good protection, I think the kind of continuing that same conversation. Not only don't reuse passwords, but use good passwords. It is shocking whenever they download all these large databases of passwords and they go through and can sort through it and find out what kind of passwords people are using. And it's stunning how many people use password as their password, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's shocking to see that.
Oh, rats! I'm gonna have to change my passwords.
LinkedIn did a whole study on the passwords that are in their system, and said, people, you need to do a little better than that. So use good passwords. Don't reuse them. And one of the things that I think is really critical is all of us have got to learn to not click on phishing emails.
Okay.
That's the thing that's all our wire frauds based on that. And vast majority of data breaches are one of two things. It's that someone clicked on a phishing email and downloaded malware and let it into the entire system, or they didn't have the most current security patches on their, like Microsoft Windows or Microsoft Office Suite or Adobe. There are vulnerabilities that are discovered, and they release security patches, and you have to stay current with those. That's what happened to Equifax. They did not download the most current patch. Took them a month to do it.
Wow.
And that led them into like 60 databases of Equifax. And it took them a couple of months to go through there and figure out, the bad guys, where they wanted to go. And they just slowly went in and downloaded all the data over about a couple of months. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a very methodical process, all based on the fact that they hadn't downloaded the most recent security patches. So that's things that affect us. It affects big corporations.
Yikes! Wow. Well, since you hit on wire fraud, let's take our last couple of minutes and talk just a little bit about wire fraud in your and my industries. It's huge right now. I heard a story the other day of a realtor that his leasing client got an email that supposedly was from him and said, send your $3,500 deposit to this address. And of course it wasn't the realtor. Someone had impersonated the realtor, and of course that realtor ended up having to pay $3,500 to make things right. That's it, in the grand scheme of things, that it could have been a lot worse. But
I've seen a lot worse.
So tell us a little bit about wire fraud and what we should be doing to prevent it in our industry.
So the core thing that all of us, so every party to the real estate transaction, both title companies, realtors, lenders, buyers, sellers, inspectors, home insurance providers, everyone who's involved in that transaction, the challenge is that email is a very trusting environment. When you get an email, it's just so tempting to just assume it's legitimate. So they start with that vulnerability, or that failing of all of us, that when we see an email, if it's written personally to us, it's got information we might recognize, we just start assuming it's legitimate. And they've really preyed upon and taken advantage of that. And for a while they attacked title companies to get us to send our wires to the wrong person. So they'd send a fake email to us, we would get fooled. Pretty much the whole industry, the title insurance industry, and to a large extent the real estate industry, although the realtors don't initiate wires that often, and lenders have all become educated. The people who haven't are buyers. So many of the buyers have received fake emails with very concrete information. So I understand you're closing in 2 days. You need to bring $54,000 to the closing. I need you to wire that money to this wiring instructions and get it to us a day in advance so you don't hold up closing. That's a real typical fake email that a buyer gets. And we have maybe 2 a week that happen to us. We do about 800 closings, 600 to 800 closings a month. And we'll have about 2 a week that I know about, where a buyer tries to be tricked. And I've actually literally been in arguments with buyers, and I've said, that wasn't from us. No, that was from you.
Oh my!
I got that from Susie, and she did send it to me. I said, no, that was a fake email. That wasn't us. No, it was from you. And so and it just shows how trusting people get.
Yes.
And so what we do is we call every buyer prior to the closing, usually right when the contract comes in. We'll send them a DocuSign document so they sign it. We have lots of email warnings, but it's really that phone call that does a lot of good. And we really try to scare them and say, if you're going to wire funds, you need to understand, here's the process. Don't trust email that comes even from us. Call and verify that. And what we want agents to do is do the same thing. We want them to tell their buyers the same thing. Don't trust email ever. Tell them you'll never send them wiring instructions, and the title company will never send them wiring instructions until they ask for it. They shouldn't. And even when they do receive them, they need to call and confirm. And some people say, well, I'd just rather bring a cashier's check, and I'm like all for that. There's nothing wrong with cashier's checks.
Okay.
Very hard to and very unusual to try to have a fraudulent cashier's check come into us from someone who's the actual person. So we know how to verify those. We don't see those very often.
Okay.
Wires, we see a lot of attempted frauds.
Sure. Wow, that's great information. Well, we're going to wrap up for today, but I want to encourage everybody to tune in on October the 23rd. What can I do to protect my clients' data in my systems, and what can I do to protect my personal computers to prevent data breach in my home? And then also ransomware. We'll talk about ransomware. That's a very interesting thing that's happening a lot. I know even in the state of Texas here. What do you do if you're a victim of that? So we'll cover that on October 23rd. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
You bet. Enjoyed it.
And this is Dan Campbell with the Happy Home Seller, and we'll see you on October 23rd. Thank you.